The host for today is Marko Kovačević, and this is the opportunity to briefly introduce him. Marko Kovačević, CEO of Signet World, a privately held business transformation and growth company where he spearheads major strategic transformation initiatives and their integration for clients on the global market. Previously, as CEO and General Manager for Trisma Smart Sourcing, Marko led the company's US, European, and international business development efforts while at the same time transforming the company's added value services, implementing process improvement initiatives, and creating effective products development systems. Earlier in his career, Marko rose through the ranks of two international NGOs, the Atlantic Treaty Association as its Youth Executive Vice President and as Vice President of the Atlantic Association of Young Political Leaders. He launched his career at the Atlantic Council of Serbia, where he served as Executive Director. Marko is a Harvard Business School graduate, where he completed the OPM Executive Management Program as 52nd generation. He holds a master's degree in international business from Grenoble École de Management and Bachelor of Law from the University of Belgrade. Marko, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivana. After listening to the introduction, I can say, I grew 2 centimeters at least. But thank you very much for, the invitation. It's a pleasure. Big congratulations to TeleGroup and to Dalibor and you, for putting such an event in such an important time as well and moving it in online and keeping it vibrant as it is. So it's my pleasure and honor to be with you today.
Thank you. And thanks to your guests, Samuel Associates from Canada. We are really looking forward to listen to their view from the global perspective. And please do introduce them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivana. So hello, everybody. It's my great pleasure to be the moderator on today's panel. We will be focusing, as it says, to new technologies, trends, and innovation, which becomes even more important today, having in mind the difficulties the whole world is going with the pandemic. And of course, since everything is moving into the digital world now more rapidly than ever before, cybersecurity in that area becomes something which is a pillar for stability and securely going through the e-commerce processes. So the panelists for today are 3 really distinguished gentlemen who have had the careers before, both in business and in administration, on the executive levels, meaning that they have been leading various different businesses, some of them private, some of them linked directly to the big government organizations, and as well have been part of the transformational pieces within the respected areas of their government. So I think in that sense, what we try to merge here is we try to merge both. We try to merge business and administration because it goes one with another, especially related to innovation and the way of how things are followed and executed along the way. So today, with me, I have Goran Samuel Pešić, who is the president and CEO of Samuel Associates, a Canadian-based advisory company, which is basically working with the companies as well on their transformation, working for their new business opportunities in North America, and also product development and product design. And in the area of cybersecurity and technology, they are very active, but you will hear more from the Goran and the team. Then we have Jamie Baillie, who has been the executive, who is the executive chair of Fundametric INC, who is specialized in AI technology. So very, very relevant for what we have been talking. And Jamie has a vast experience as the executive as well in various different businesses, plus the administration. And we have Brian MacDonald, who is a former director of crisis and manager at Stockholm Bank, which is one of the largest banks in Canada. And he's a former 2-team member of the Legislative Assembly of the New Brunswick. So, with that sense, he has been covering as well the both spectrum of the world. And what is great about this is that it's very rare that people are combining, in one person, all of these roles. So Goran, Jamie, and Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marko. Good to be here.
Thank you. Also, let's deep dive into the topic rather than talking about ourselves. I think that's what's more interesting for everybody. So let us just give you a brief executive summary in which direction we will go. So we will try to keep this as a fireside chat, meaning that we will be going through the several questions which will correlate in the areas of the current trends in the geography where our distinguished speakers are from, the dynamics of these markets, then correlating everything with the deep dive research and education, how that makes the progress. And then we will be talking about collaboration. And at the end, we will ask them also for their advice for all the people who are following what we are trying to share here, in a sense of something which can be practical and applied. Because we all learned and we all know, especially in today's time when everything is online and there is so much content, the key differentiator are not the thoughts, but basically the actual practical pieces which everybody can take on their own and then make something of them. So let's start with the first question to all the panelists. Please share with us, what do you see as three main trends or three main market dynamics in the new technology and innovation in your geography today, meaning in North America per se? So let's start from Goran first.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Marko. We did have the chance of actually you giving us some of the questions in advance, or at least some of the ideas that we're seeking, and we decided to talk about a little bit more than three because of the different geography that we have in Canada. And so what we've proposed is actually 7 drivers. If I can go to the next slide. And it really is, how would I put it, Canada is the second largest country in the world. And we really, when we think of Canada, we should be thinking about regions. And so what will be applicable to one region may be slightly different to the other. And so we combined our efforts and thoughts and said, 3 may not be enough because of the type of country we had. So we came up with 7, if that's okay. So
please carry on. I think from having more, it was never a problem.
Absolutely. So we thought what would be good would be certainly things that are common, and then things perhaps that are unique to us as well. And so developing this slide, we talked about the most important thing is that the private-public partnerships are forming to encourage what we call collaboration and investments in cyber security. This is very important because institutions such as businesses, academia, different incubators that are for startups, they're all coming together now and forming these unique partnerships. And there's a lot of incentives that governments are putting in terms of investment incentives, tax incentives, and other incentives to do that. So we think that number one is certainly this idea about public-private partnerships collaboration. The second one is, and this is important, of course, as we talk about a little bit about our regions, and we'll get into some other slides to kind of get a flavor for how big Canada really is and how different in many respects its geography dictates some of the initiatives that we're doing. So in our regional markets, everybody is creating and promoting high-tech innovation incubators for startup. And that means different things in different cities around Canada. But that's a very important theme to consider because, again, it reinforces point number one. On 3, cyber solutions, for example, are now global. And what we like about this is that they could be adapted at a regional level and to local markets and to local customers. So this is a trend that I would say we really benefited for the last, let's say, decade, but even more so now because of the pandemic. There is now a greater appreciation for taking global solutions and really bringing them down to the local level. Number 4, in Canada, we have a unique aspect in the sense that we have access to what we consider working capital. And like any cybersecurity companies or AI companies or other IT companies looking to commercialize their items, having access to working capital that's reliable there over a period of time is absolutely essential. So we're fortunate to have institutions, companies, and structures to deliver that. We also have a commercialization process here in Canada to take an idea and move it all the way up through production. And that is done, again, in collaboration with universities, research centers, and private sector enterprises. And lastly, it's something that we don't think about, but we're very fortunate that we have a highly effective intellectual property protection regime. So IP here is very protected, and I think Jamie, my colleague, will speak a little bit about what that means in some recent case studies that we'll raise to highlight that. In Canada, as in the European Union, for example, in many different countries in the region, economies are integrated. Just one second here. Economies are integrated, and our economy is integrated very much with the United States. And as we start, just one moment here, my screen is. As we start to consider where does Canada really fit in? Well, we're very much tied to the U.S. In many different areas: transportation, financial services, communications, digital supply chain, and of course, manufacturing, automation, and Internet of Things are just on the horizon and are coming fast. Points number 6 and 7 are really connected to one another. COVID-19, in our view, has really reduced the cost of doing business in North America because of remote working and certainly online meetings and conferences like this. This is now the new normal. So what was considered, for example, a little bit of a disadvantage for one part of the world to do business in another part of the world, this has really now, I would say, been a leveler to reduce the cost because of video conferencing and the ability to connect to new partners, new customers, new academic institutions. And lastly, and of course this is unique to us here, the Government of Canada, as of March of this year, has really spent a lot of money, somewhere in the order of $320 billion to stimulate the economy during the pandemic. And the biggest benefactors for these spending priorities have been cyber companies, IT companies, and certainly next generation health sciences and many others, AI, etc. So these, Marko, have been really, I would say, unique to us, but also very opportune to markets like in Europe, for example, or in Serbia or Croatia or Bosnia or other areas that are looking for moving their solutions into other spaces, and which we'll talk a little bit about our geography in the next slide. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick snapshot of how big Canada is, and we're only going to speak to just one section of it. I will be covering Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto. My colleagues in Halifax, James Baillie, will be covering what's happening on the Halifax scene, and Brian MacDonald will be covering what's happening locally in Fredericton. Next slide, please. So just to give everyone an idea here, when we think of Ottawa, that's our national capital here. Toronto is our financial capital, and Montreal is also an important capital for financial and other innovations, especially in cybersecurity, innovations, AI, machine learning, simulation, gaming industry. All those tend to be either in Toronto or in Montreal. Just here in Ottawa itself, we have about 1.5 million people. So we are very much lucky that our own market here is big enough to accommodate a lot of cybersecurity opportunities. In fact, what we're called here essentially is the Silicon Valley of the North to some extent, because most of the global IT companies are located here in Ottawa, or if not in Ottawa, they're in Toronto or Montreal. And when we consider this, we talk about what we call the Golden Triangle here, and that is a population base of about 10 million people make up these three cities. And that's a very sizable amount for opportunities. What we've listed here is sort of the priority areas, and obviously the areas where cybersecurity would be best targeted. Of course, Ottawa here is a government town, so obviously applications for government and security and defense. But as we get into areas where cybersecurity is absolutely essential, such as financial industry, insurance, manufacturing, utilities, environmental sciences, telecommunications, agriculture, this is where Toronto, or Montreal, or both, or all of these play into this market. So we can talk for hours and days on any one of those cities and how much, let's say, collaboration and unique access to working capital, partnerships, and opportunities exist in any of those. What I'll do is I'll stop here and pass the slide over next to my colleague in Halifax. We'll talk a little bit about what the scene there is. Take it away, Jamie.
Thank you, Goran, and good afternoon, everyone, or good morning from here in Halifax, Canada. Welcome to Canada. We're delighted to be able to tell you a little bit about what's going on here. You may not know this, but it's snowing here in Halifax this morning. That might be one of your thoughts when you think about Canada, and today it happens to be true in my city. But I hope in the next few minutes you'll see that there's a whole lot more going on here than just maybe lobsters or snow. Halifax is the capital of the province of Nova Scotia. We're on the Atlantic side of Canada. You may know that from geography class, but what you may not know is that Halifax is the home to 11 degree-granting universities. Nova Scotia as a province has the highest number of PhDs per capita of any state or province in North America. And a few years ago, the government of Nova Scotia set a goal of doubling the foreign direct investment coming into the province of Nova Scotia by 2025, and we're on track to exceed that goal. I tell you all that because Halifax and Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada in general have become a modern and dynamic economy. In fact, just yesterday, the Royal Bank of Canada, which is Canada's largest bank and also the 11th largest bank in the world by market cap, the Royal Bank issued a report called Outlook 2021, predicting what the economy of Canada will look like when we come out of COVID and hopefully start to grow again next year. And what the bank predicted was that the economy of Canada is going to grow again, but it's going to be very uneven. That places that rely on more traditional industries like tourism, for example, are going to continue to struggle while that industry slowly recovers. But that areas of the country that have become more reliant on IT, on artificial intelligence, on research, on cyber issues, they're going to thrive. And it specifically mentioned Halifax as a city that's expected to do well in 2021 because of its bustling IT sector. I share that with you, both as someone who's very proud of that fact, but also because I want to tell you a little story. I believe it was mentioned earlier that I am the executive chair of the board of a company here called FundMetric. FundMetric is a machine learning company. Out of interest, FundMetric helps large institutions, primarily universities, raise more money from their alumni and their donor base by using artificial intelligence to predict who among their vast network of donors is most likely to give to an annual appeal and how much they're likely to give so they can pinpoint and target their fundraising requests. And FundMetric's value proposition to its clients is that they can double the annual giving targets of a university or any large institution in 1 year based on the power of artificial intelligence. Now, I'm not telling you that to sell you on the value of FundMetric. The real story of FundMetric is that it is a company that has been commercialized out of a university. Acadia University is one of the 11 in Nova Scotia. Acadia had an artificial intelligence lab. That lab did a lot of the algorithms and coding that FundMetric, a private company, now relies on. The principals in FundMetric licensed the IP for this code that was born at Acadia University and have commercialized it and are now into post-revenue, as we say in the startup world, and making money as a result of that IP. One of the great things about Canada, of course, like many developed countries, we have a very strong legal system. We have a great intellectual property framework that can allow real private sector value to be created. And we have these entrepreneurs who have been educated at these universities to the PhD level, who are writing some of the best code and some of the best algorithms in the world, and they're out looking for partners. That has allowed our economy to really thrive despite the weather. I'll give you some examples. You can see some on the screen there. Besides FundMetric, GoInstant, which was a customer relationship management software, started in exactly the same way, was sold to Salesforce a few years ago for 70 million Canadian dollars. Kinduct, which just recently sold, a company here in Halifax that helps professional sports teams crunch big data on their athletes and on competitor athletes. They have Major League Baseball, they have National Hockey League, they have soccer teams or football teams from around the world as their clients. They sold, as you can see, for a lot of money recently to MCube. Verifin, which does actual customer verification for banks, is like a Newfoundland company, not Nova Scotia, but that's right next door. Recently sold to the NASDAQ for 2.7 billion Canadian dollars. These all started in innovation labs in universities here in Atlantic Canada. So we've got the ecosystem right, and we're looking to take on the world as a result. For you, all of you, I think when you think of us and are looking for opportunities, there are a number, but I wanted to give you a couple of themes. One is cybersecurity specifically. Halifax, my city, is home to the largest and most modern shipyard in the east coast of North America, the Irving Shipyard. It was recently rebuilt and expanded because it is building Canada's next generation of surface combatant warships and Arctic offshore patrol ships. It's an $80 billion contract to build the ships and to fit them up, which includes a lot of very sensitive, high-tech military security hardware and software. It's creating an entire industry to support the work of the Irving Shipyard. And by the way, that is a 35-year contract. A generation of Nova Scotians and others will participate in that contract over its life. Secondly, as you may know about Canada, besides our snow, is that Canada has a very vigorous, publicly funded, universally accessible healthcare system. That healthcare system actually is run at the provincial level. I know my colleague Brian will talk about New Brunswick in a moment, but it's true for every province, including Nova Scotia, and that healthcare system is modernizing. And it's modernizing rapidly because of COVID. So a lot of healthcare procedures, whether in primary healthcare with your family doctor or acute care in a hospital, that were still being run with fax machines and personal visits, have all had to rush online this year because of COVID. That was a slowly developing trend. Anyway, now it's become a very rapidly developing trend. And with all of that moving online, the issue of personal privacy has become crucial. You're looking for opportunities in healthcare delivery in the IT space. Privacy is a big, big deal. We have very rigorous enforced privacy laws here in Canada, particularly around people's personal information, and we're still figuring out how to protect privacy, people's privacy, and how to be compliant with those privacy laws in the online world. Anyone with solutions in that area is going to do very well in Canada. And then thirdly, I touched on this with my FundMetric story, but our accelerator startup community has become a big success. Both Dalhousie University, which has the Creative Destruction Lab, where they bring together success stories from the past, either the recent past or entrepreneurs from the more distant past, together with new startups to pass on the wisdom of their experience and also to invest in new startups. It's a big part of the Dalhousie University commercialization process. It actually is a program started at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada, but it has, and which is where BlackBerry was invented. It has become a huge part of, as Goran was talking about, public to private. So publicly funded universities doing research in labs, including IT, moving on to accelerator programs like CDL, Creative Destruction Lab, licensing the IP that is created out into the private community, building companies like Fundmetric and the ones listed on the screen, who then end up exiting into the public markets at great prices. That's the value creation stream that we are building here in Atlantic Canada. So that's my part of the country, which I will sum up as being from fishermen and lobsters to artificial intelligence and machine learning. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to my colleague Brian in the neighboring province of New Brunswick.
Well, thanks very much, Jamie. And Jamie's given all of you a glimpse into Atlantic Canada. Historically, Atlantic Canada was the founding part of Canada. We're very from the beginning of Confederation, and we've traditionally been the gateway to North America. And so my province, New Brunswick, neighboring on Jamie's Nova Scotia, we're the hub of the Atlantic provinces. And basically, if you want to get to the rest of Canada, you have to come through us. And we also have the border with the United States. So we're kind of strategically positioned geographically, but also in terms of tech. And here in Fredericton, we've got in the province, we have a population of about 750,000 people. So a small but strong population base. And we're also have the advantage of being bilingual. So we speak English and French here, which I know to a lot of people on this seminar, you're used to having to communicate in a number of different languages. So we in New Brunswick are used to those challenges and the strengths that those provide us. Here in New Brunswick, we have focused our attention on the tech sector and most recently on cybersecurity. So a while ago, the governments of all levels and local entrepreneurs invested in infrastructure. We built Knowledge Park, and that's centered here where I am in the capital city of Fredericton. And it's a cluster of buildings that support tech and cyber companies, including IBM and Salesforce, which I'm sure you've heard of. They have invested and made a significant presence here in little old Fredericton. And so that geography brings its own kind of synergy. So the fact that we have a dedicated knowledge park inside Fredericton, where we can cluster these different tech companies and cyber companies together, does present a center of mass that we've sought to create here. And building on the success of that is Cyber NB, Cyber New Brunswick. Cyber New Brunswick aims to be Canada's epicenter for cybersecurity, and they're succeeding at that. So again, governments and industrial partners and commercial partners made an investment and made a decision that we want to pursue Fredericton, New Brunswick as Canada's cyber capital. And so we're pressing forward with that. And in fact, just on Friday, Cyber New Brunswick released some really good programs. They have an incubator and an accelerator program. So if any of you there are looking at a startup, I suggest you look toward their website, Cyber NB. And it's a very well put together package that is trying to attract companies to come here to Fredericton to lay down their roots. And on the back of that, I think probably Marko, you're going to touch on this a little bit later, but I want to introduce it, and that is the issue of academia and how that dovetails in. I mean, Jamie's already talked about the significant presence in Eastern Canada of chartered universities. So we have a long history of producing high-level university graduates. Here in Fredericton, we have the University of New Brunswick, which is known for its engineering, particularly mathematics and computer science. So very strong academic background in that. And they have partnered with this cyber network that we have here in New Brunswick to host the Canadian Institute for Cybersecurity. So that's located right here in Fredericton. So you have this great sort of, as we've put it before, the three-legged stool. You have the Knowledge Park, you've got the geography, you have Cyber New Brunswick, which is an engine that's driving innovation and bringing startups in, and you have the Canadian Institute for Cybersecurity that provides the academic side of it. So that's a little orientation to the market here. Those three things drive the trends in innovation. And Marko, I'm going to pitch it back to you because I think we might have some other questions for us.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and thank you all. I think this has been very comprehensive, in a sense of how you have deep dive into various topics, and then we'll definitely start back from you, Brian, in a sense towards the next question, which I think is very crucial, and that's where do you see the role of like a deep dive research and education in the growth of new technologies and innovation capacity. All of you mentioned, the role of universities, and can you share a bit more in a way of what are the synergies there? Certain things have been mentioned for the ecosystems for innovations. So coming from your areas and coming from your expertise, both on business side and administration side, where can you put those?
Yeah, so as I sort of led into it there with what we have here in Fredericton is the Canadian Institute for Cybersecurity, which by its name is obviously driving academic research into cybersecurity. And it's located right now on campus at the University of New Brunswick, which I mentioned has a strong engineering faculty there. But what makes the Cyber Center, the Cyber Institute rather, quite unique and dynamic is that it's also partnering with commercial partners. And the goal of that research isn't necessarily research in itself, but it's to produce commercialized products and services that can then be marketed and exported. So what you get is a real cluster of academic knowledge, engineering background, but also that commercialization, so that it can then feed into the ecosystem that Cyber New Brunswick has that commercializes those products. So it's a great pipeline to take research and make it marketable.
I really like this, what you shared, Brian, because I think this is a successful case study of how you basically put the ideas into a real-time business practice, because there are so many ideas we all hear about and we all know about, but not all of them come into the business perspective. And on the other side, most of them even don't pay for the costs. So what we can say, if you agree, is that basically through this collaboration, you have something like a completely applied research, right?
That's it. That's the goal. I mean, there is some academic research as well, of course, that takes place, but the focus is on commercializing that research, on producing products. So to take that research from its academic basis and then develop products and commercialize that, and then support, because that's not an easy process, right? So the research is one thing, but people that are in the research field don't necessarily have the connections or the experience or the knowledge to commercialize. And that's where they need a little bit of help. So there's programs in place at CyberMB to help them, like to hold their hand, give them white glove treatment, to take them from that academic research through the startup process, which is pretty scary, really, for those people that haven't been through it. But take them through that process, introduce them to commercial contacts, introduce them to government contacts, and then, ultimately get a product onto the street that can be marketed. That's the goal, and they've created this pipeline that helps people through different stages to ultimately be successful.
This is beautiful, Brian, and I think going forward we can definitely talk to TeleGroup about it and share this experience and case study, and it can be something which can be very tangible for the market of Southeast Europe. So thanks, Brian.
Thank
Jamie,
you.
What's your call on that? I loved your comment related to the ecosystem, because I think wherever we have the ecosystems for the startups to grow, with the support which comes from the areas where the guys are lacking the support. So it's not only financial, it's as well knowledge-based, related to finances, marketing the product, let's say fine-tuning the approach towards the market and everything else, that can only create success. But can you elaborate more on that aspect and say, like how you correlate the education, the ecosystem for growth and innovation?
Yeah, sure. I really like what Brian had to say about the Cyber New Brunswick. And in Nova Scotia, we do see it as an ecosystem. And it starts even with universities who have created, believe it or not, what we call sandboxes, where we actually pay people to play in the IT space in universities, right from the germ of an idea. The universities, the government, and the private sector together start the value creation process. And that moves all the way through with the Creative Destruction Lab and through to the licensing of IP to a private company and to the capitalization of that company, and then eventually its exit when they're ready to sell to a larger entity. That is a very, very important part of the modern economy. I will issue one warning, Marko, and to the audience, and that is it's crucial to always be clear on who owns the intellectual property that's being created. There have been many, many good companies tripped up on this very question. I'll give you a fun example. I don't know how many people are following the music scene, but Bob Dylan recently sold the publishing rights to his entire catalog of music. Bob Dylan, the folk singer, the American folk singer, he sold his catalog for $300 million. That's really the intellectual property embedded in his music. That's an incredible amount of money, obviously, for one artist's catalog. On the other hand, Taylor Swift, who I think is probably known around the world, when she was a young artist, she gave away the publishing rights to her music at the start of her career. And she spent her entire career since trying to get it back. She gave it away to her publishing label, who then sold it to a private investor who's making the money off of her music. Same with music, same with code, same with algorithms, same with gaming products, same with everything that we do in IT. I fully am excited about what Brian said, and I just want to issue that very clear warning to be crystal clear. If an idea is created in university, does the state own it? Does the entrepreneur own it? Is it licensed? Is it sold? These are crucial questions that you have to get right as you build value with your ideas.
Thank you very much, Jamie. I think this is a great add-on. Apart from starting a successful idea and then developing it into business, one of the long-term success factors is who owns the IP, and especially in the digital world, especially in cybersecurity solutions. So this is where a lot of companies fall short, unfortunately, because the price tag for, let's say, getting the advice in this area might be too much for them. But at the end of the day, what they're losing is what you said with the music correlation. They can lose the whole value long term. So do you invest a bit now in order to capture the value over time and then build it in the right way? Or do you risk everything just because you cannot pay the bill at this stage? So it's really phenomenal. Thank you for sharing. So Goran, what comes in your area and geography related to correlating the education, knowledge, and the ecosystem?
Thank you, Marko, and I just want to thank TeleGroup for hosting this event, because I think it's a great event. It certainly brings together different people from different geographies, and I want to congratulate them for putting this forward and for including us in this, because we're obviously passionate about technology and looking at how we can obviously work together. I would say that for our market here, I just want to pick up on what Brian and Jamie have been saying about experimentation. So they use sandbox, and here, I guess in Ottawa, we use the term experimentation and conceptualization, and also technology fusion. So we are looking at, working with companies and looking with university labs for that experimentation, because you don't know what can be produced. And if something then is produced, there are also business mentors who are local entrepreneurs in the high-tech sector who have made a fortune, if you will, creating their own companies in cybersecurity or IT that sometimes are matched to evolving experimentation, if you will, because there is a recognition that there is something there. But at the same time, as my colleague suggested, there is a lack of business understanding. There's also a lack of a couple of other pieces of understanding. The legal, I do agree with Jamie completely that who owns this is fundamental. And if that's not clarified up front, then there's going to be problems later. The other thing is we're fortunate that here in Canada, we can benefit from tax credits. There is a big regime here to have tax incentives for companies to take risks, or individuals to take risks because they will be somehow tax incentivized. So we have a different type of structure here, but that's all to create, I would consider, experimentation that leads to some recognition of what that tool is, and then that tool has a path to eventually commercialization, and hopefully some type of company structure that can own it, produce it, and maybe even sell it at some point.
Thank you very much, Goran. I think the two key things I wrote down, from what you have shared is basically that you also add one very important component to the overall innovation platform, and that's the capacity for mentorship, where you basically exchange, like the hands-on knowledge and the overall experience and expertise in, building the new solutions. And the other side, the state also has a stake in, under quotes, with having the special programs for accelerating these kind of innovation companies or the overall ideas. So I think what you draw, gentlemen, is really something which completely resonates as an ecosystem where the academic institution basically focused on applied research, as Brian shared, and they're as well building a pipeline of the problems where you should be creating solutions, which is marvelous because you focus your intellectual power into resolving the actual things. And then coming to Jamie, what you shared, around that you are building an ecosystem which will really define what the IP is and how the IP can be protected and then grown in the right aspect. And then you round up everything with what you said, Goran, mentorship and support towards the new businesses, which is really great. So if you agree, gentlemen, because I'm mindful as well about the time, we have several questions coming from the chat. So I'll start from them because I would like to save at least 5 minutes before the end that every one of you offers at least a 2-minute, let's say, view on how you will advise all our people who are following, on what would be your advice for going forward within the innovation. So the first question which came is directly related to your business as a platform, and the question is, are you part of Canadian government? I know the answer, but I think it's better for you to share it.
We're a private company, 100% private owned. We do pay taxes to the government, so we're not part of the government.
But what is the beauty about all of you is that you have had before, certain periods of your life when you were serving within the government, and now you are creating the new value through what you are doing in business, right?
Yeah,
that's right. And
sorry,
we're all proud champions of Canada. I mean, I think it comes through in our presentation is, one thing we share is a real passion for our part of Canada, and a deep belief that it's a great entry point for companies to come into North America, because I think when you're on a different continent and you're looking at North America, it can be quite daunting, also tempting because it's an incredibly large and lucrative market to get into, and it's often hard to find an entry point. And what we found is that, but we're advocates for our part of the world. We want companies and people to come here, and we want business to come here, and we found that it's a great way for companies to get that kind of toehold into North America, understand the culture, understand how to operate here, and they can then springboard into the the large markets that we have to the south in the United States or across Canada.
I just want to answer, Marco. You can have many careers in Canada. You can be a politician, as Brian and Jamie have, serving in Parliament, in their provincial parliaments. You could also be, in military service, and of course you finish that as a veteran. You can be in academia. You can be as a business person, etc. So you have many careers, if you will, and that's why perhaps we're very unique in our company that we have so many people that have had variety of careers, that we really benefit from that wisdom and knowledge that is, intergenerational, and that's important too, because we don't know what we don't know, and so when we have a lot of smart people, we can cover a lot of that unknowns. And so some of the tough questions that you're asking, I do want to go to one question, Marco, that you had, and that was about one piece of advice to the audience. I think what's important is really doing your due diligence on selecting the right partner. The great idea may be blinding the due diligence on the partner, because that's important for one reason, and that is a shared and aligned, unified vision of where things are going. You don't want to be in a partnership where one party has one view of the world or one vision and another has another. That will typically go nowhere. So I think that when you're selecting the right partner in any business format, it's really about an aligned vision of going there together and where that together destination is ultimately.
Thank you, Goran. You always see things, one step ahead. So let me then refer the question to Brian, now, related to what would you share as the advice, going forward for all those companies who are looking into innovation in their various businesses? So from your perspective and knowledge, what has been the most fruitful approach?
Well, I would, if I'm going to leave people with one thing, I would say, get on your computer and Google Canada and Atlantic Canada, because I think you'll find that this small part of the world has a lot to offer in terms of innovation and support for companies that are looking to expand. And as I said earlier, we're a great entry point into North America. And I think if you learn more about, we have a big cousin to the south, the United States, and that's a big lucrative market. And that can be very daunting. So I would say, don't forget about us all tucked away up here. Please look at Canada and think about how the innovation solutions that are growing here could suit with your business needs in where you are.
Thank you very much, Brian. It makes a lot of sense, and I really am pleased to be on this panel with you guys, because you come from, let's say, hardcore real-time doing business, which makes always a difference rather than just as an observer. So Jamie, back to you.
Well, I first want to address your original question about whether Samuel Associates is part of the government. And I can prove we're not by telling you this quick story. Earlier today, I asked Goran, how do you dress for this conference? I haven't been part of Infosec before. Should I wear a tie? Should I not wear a tie? He said, well, don't wear a tie because people will think you're a politician, and we wouldn't want that. So I tried hard not to be offended by that, having once been a politician, a recovering politician like Brian. And I'm not wearing a tie, as you can see, which shows we're a private company. But having said that, it is so important when you're doing business in Canada to get the government relations right. The government is a big part of the economy of Canada as a modern, developed, progressive country, particularly in this space where you're relying on the government to protect your intellectual property, where there's a whole slate of government incentives in our space, the tax credits that Goran mentioned. Atlantic Canada has a whole slate of economic development agencies with grants and payroll rebates and credits to help companies when they need an early boost, even legal services around protecting IP and business planning. And you ought to access that when you come to Canada. So we are a private company, and I know this sounds like a sales pitch for Samuel and Associates, but we actually have set up a division, Samuel Technologies, to help companies coming into Canada to sort of validate the technology, to kind of Canadianize it, and then to do the market development research to position them for success here in our country. We are one of the largest countries geographically in the world, which means we rely on IT to communicate with each other, among other things. We're a country of almost 40 million people, and one of the most educated countries in the world. So our use of high-tech hardware and software is very high. And of course, as Brian mentioned, we do have this other country right on our border called the United States, and we have a free trade agreement with the United States, which allows us to buy and sell products and services across that border tariff-free. So, welcome to Canada, come to Canada, and we're here with open arms. And that's my answer to your question.
Thank you very much, Jamie. I think we got all the perspectives, and just before I sum up everything, I'll have a brief question for all of you, and where I ask you to offer your view of the future. And in that sense, I would say, let's try to be innovative in a way of how we do it in the panel. And I know it was not part of the things we discussed when we were preparing, and that's why I would like to challenge all of us, and I will say my part as well. But where do you see the future of collaboration within the technology framework for North America and the Balkans? Like, from your point of view, what is the future? Is it collaboration? Are those direct investment partnerships, like whatever, right? Or academia connectivity? So where do you see?
Can I jump in there? I would just say that this platform that we're allowed to be on today is what I call a start, because it's a digital bridge. we are creating that digital bridge, and every bridge has an end-to-end point, right? So know that the community in the Balkans or Southeast Europe has a bridge to come into Canada. There's a lot of diaspora here that are in the high-tech sector, working in the private sector, in the government sector, benefit from those contacts. That digital diaspora, as I call it, is part of that bridge. And I just want to compliment you, Marko, for helping us and of course and the TeleGroup and others build that digital bridge. Because if we don't do that, nobody's going to cross it, and nobody's going to transact along that bridge. And along that bridge is a journey, and so we learn from each other about what the best practices are and also what to avoid. As much as we want to know things, it's also what we don't want to know that we can talk about on that digital bridge. So I'll pass it over to my other colleagues just to get their input on that. But I would say keep building that digital bridge. It's absolutely essential, and I would say a lifeline for our two communities.
Thank you, Goran. Jamie?
Yes, well, look, Brian and I are part of what's called the Atlantic Bubble in Canada, which has been both a national success, and you might have even heard of it. It's been a global success in the fight against COVID-19. The borders between the 4 Atlantic provinces came down. We bubbled as a region of Canada. COVID rates came down. Hospitalizations came down. We were freely able to travel across our own provincial borders, which we normally are in normal times, but in COVID times, that was all restricted. But because we were able to come together kind of as an Atlantic family of 3.2 million people, we kind of led the world in how to bring restrictions on to stop a pandemic, but still come together across borders. I say that because COVID really has done the same thing for the world. The ability to communicate across borders has gone up. The idea that we're all in this together, which doesn't happen on a global scale very often in our lifetimes, has happened in 2020. It's been an awful year, obviously, for everybody, and God forbid for the families that have been directly affected, including losing family members because of COVID-19. But we've all come together, facing a common challenge in a way that doesn't happen in the world very often. In fact, just the other day, maybe yesterday, there was on the international news, the first vaccine was given to a 93-year-old woman in Coventry, England, and it was covered worldwide. And I'm sure, like all of you, I was thinking of my own mother. We're all thinking of our mothers and grandfathers who hopefully will get access to that vaccine soon, and then the rest of us to follow. We're all in this together. And so COVID has created, in all this hardship, an opportunity, which is to bring down the borders, to do international collaboration. This whole conference is a great example of that. And that means that when someone has an idea in Serbia that we want to research at Dalhousie in Halifax, and then register the IP in Ottawa, Ontario, and then sell it into New York City or into some other country, that's going to happen more and more. It's a great hope, I think, for the future. And technology is allowing us to do it. And just imagine if we had COVID-19 15 years ago, which we could have easily, we wouldn't be able to collaborate the way we are. But, thankfully, it's happening at a time when we can all come together internationally. And so I believe the biggest opportunity for collaboration in world history is now right at our doorsteps, and the opportunity to create real economic value will follow from that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jamie. And Brian, your brief input.
Thanks. Yeah. Jamie set me up for that just great. And I want to say, I don't know how well I understand the future, but I do understand the past. And personally spent a year of my life in the Balkans and had a very positive experience there. And Serbian culture is well established in Canada. Throughout Canada, there are long existing Serbian communities. And there's also new immigrants now that are entrepreneurs that are making their way here in Canada, doing all the things that Jamie just talked about. And as far as the future goes, I'm a big Black Mirror fan. I suspect some of your viewers are too. And so I know what I don't want the future to look like. But the good news is I have the sense that there are, because of Serbian culture, because of the innovative nature and the affordability of labor and the expertise and the knowledge that is clustering now in Serbia, there are a lot of products and technologies that can find world markets. And I think the future is getting those goods and services and knowledge and technologies to the world market. And so I think that's a great trend for the future. And as Jamie has said, there's a good opportunity to make that happen in North America. So thank you very much. Really enjoyed the panel today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And let me share like the 3 key conclusions which you gentlemen, outlined now. And I think what we can all go have as a takeaway from this panel is that we should be building the digital bridge together, because that's the new pathway for all of us. It's all about direct collaboration now, which has fundamentals of trust in between the 2 countries as well, and as well the markets. And then that we should go towards the world market together. It's not only about playing in a smaller field, but it's about being able to play on a bigger field altogether. So thank you, Goran. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Brian, for all the insights you have openly shared here. And again, big congratulations to TeleGroup for the Infosec conference. And thank you, Dalibor and Ivana, for giving us the time to try to contribute. Ivana, back to you.
Thank you all. It is a pleasure to listen to our Canadian friends. I have to say that I was a diplomatic kid in Ottawa once when Goran was in active service, political service. And I can say that Canada has opened its arms to Serbian diaspora and the Balkan diaspora. And now it holds IT and also doctors and many experts that are a part of Canadian society. And I'm very happy that we have established this bridge, because I know that this region has to offer a lot to Canada, and Canada has a lot to offer to this region. So thank you all, and I hope to be seeing you more, and your insights were very, very, very useful. Thank you. All the best to you, and I hope for the good weather this winter.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.